for?
Is this all from them doing stuff to her?
When can I hold her? Please, let me see my baby. This is Tina Harris, and she's about to walk into the worst moment of her life. Her 25-year-old daughter, Sarah, is lying dead on a living room floor, syringes scattered around her body, a tourniquet wrapped around her arm. To everyone at the scene that morning, it looked like a tragedy they'd seen too many times before. A young woman who couldn't escape her addiction. A self-inflicted overdose. Case closed, but sometimes the most obvious answer is exactly what a killer wants you to believe. Because weeks later, one accidental discovery would turn this apparent overdose into something far more sinister. A murder investigation that would expose a predator hiding in plain sight. A trusted professional who used his position to destroy a young woman's life, one injection at a time. This is the story of Sarah Harris and the man who slowly killed her while everyone thought she was killing herself. It's the early morning hours of January 26th when 911 dispatch in Maryland receives a call from a distressed man claiming he's just found his girlfriend unresponsive in his living room. The caller's voice is panicked, hard to understand. But one thing is crystal clear. His girlfriend isn't breathing. Units are dispatched immediately and arrive at the home moments later, completely unaware that the case they're walking into is far more complicated and far darker than just a medical emergency. As officers step through the front door, the first sound they hear cuts through everything else, the rhythmic beeping of a CPR metronome. That sound is hope. As long as that metronome keeps beeping, there's still a chance to save a life. And on the living room floor, surrounded by first responders, lies Sarah Harris. The scene tells a story that seems all too familiar. Syringes on the floor, a tourniquet still wrapped around her arm, drug paraphernalia everywhere. To the first responders, the cause seems obvious, an apparent drug overdose. With no pulse detected, medics begin aggressive CPR while officers turn their attention to the man who made the call. His name is James Ryan. He's an oral surgeon, owner of a local dental clinic, and Sarah's boyfriend. He's visibly distraught, pacing, struggling to hold himself together. Officers guide him away from the scene, hoping he can explain what led to this moment. James tells them that the night before, he and Sarah had been watching TV together, eating Chick-fil-A for dinner. It was a normal evening. Around 11 or midnight, he went upstairs to bed. Sarah stayed on the couch. When he came downstairs this morning, he found her exactly like this, not breathing. He immediately started CPR and called 911. So far, nothing sounds suspicious. James explains that Sarah had been struggling. She used to work at his dental clinic, but he'd had to fire her because she kept stealing drugs, powerful medications used in oral surgery. He admits he knew she was using, and he explains it by talking about her grief. Her brother had died, and Sarah had never recovered from that loss. For detectives, it starts to form a picture. A young woman drowning in grief, turning to drugs to numb the pain, eventually taking too much. It's heartbreaking, but it happens. At first, nothing about James's story raises red flags. But then something small happens. Something so subtle that officers don't even catch it in the moment. An officer asks James a direct question. Do you think maybe this was an accident? And watch what happens. James's grief completely disappears from his face. For just a split second, his expression goes blank, almost cold. Then, as if remembering he's supposed to be devastated, the anguish returns. I think so, yeah. I don't know, I hope so. It's such a brief moment that no one notices it, but it's there. The first crack in the facade. The first hint that something about James Ryan isn't quite right. For now, though, police accept the simplest explanation. A heartbreaking, self-inflicted overdose. There's no reason to suspect anything else. But then, suddenly, the only sound keeping hope alive, that CPR metronome, goes silent. The medics step back. There's nothing more they can do. Sarah Harris is dead. James collapses. His breakdown is complete and total. He's sobbing, barely able to stand. Officers try to console him while medics begin preparing Sarah's body for transport. The house slowly goes quiet. Investigators start documenting the scene, taking photos, collecting evidence, following standard procedure for an overdose case. And then everything changes. Sarah's mother arrives. Tina Harris walks through that front door straight into the worst moment of her entire life, completely unaware that she's about to give detectives a clue that will eventually change everything. Let me see my baby. Oh God, let me see my baby. Please let me see my baby. Officers try to hold her back, not because they want to be cruel, but because they know what she's about to see will haunt her forever. But Tina pushes forward. I just lost my boy. I want to see my baby. Through her overwhelming grief, Tina reveals something that gives detectives their first real insight into Sarah's emotional state. She'd lost a son just 2 years earlier. For Tina Harris, this is unimaginable, burying 2 children. For the investigators, it provides a possible explanation for Sarah's spiral into drug use, grief, trauma, pain too deep to bear. Officers try to explain what they've found, the syringes at the scene, the evidence of drug use, and that's when Tina sees them, the syringes, the injection marks on her daughter's arm, and something clicks in her mind. Something that doesn't make sense. What is all this? Is this from her? The officer confirms that the syringes were already there when they arrived, and then Tina's reaction changes everything. No, 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 no. She suddenly turns and walks straight toward James Ryan. Before anyone can stop her, she starts hitting him, striking him with her fists. Officers quickly pull her back, but the damage is done. Not physical damage. Something else. Everyone in that room just witnessed something they can't explain. Why would a grieving mother who just lost her daughter to an apparent overdose immediately attack the boyfriend? What does she know that they don't? Here's what makes that moment so strange. After officers separate Tina from James, she seems to shift. She starts echoing what James had been saying all along, that Sarah couldn't handle the grief of losing her brother, that the drugs were Sarah's way of coping, that maybe this was self-inflicted after all. So if that's what Tina believes, why did she attack James just moments earlier? That contradiction doesn't make sense to investigators, but they file it away. For now, they have no reason to suspect foul play, no evidence of a crime, just a tragic end to a young life. Days go by, then weeks. The investigation appears to be wrapping up. But behind the scenes, procedures continue. Because Sarah had been stealing drugs from James's dental clinic, the DEA begins preparing to review his practice. At worst, James might face fines or lose his medical license. A professional consequence for failing to secure controlled substances. What no one realizes is that something far more significant is about to surface. Along with the autopsy, Sarah's blood samples were sent for toxicology analysis, standard procedure, and when those results come back, they shock everyone involved in the case. The drugs themselves aren't the surprise. James had already admitted Sarah was using what she stole from his clinic, but it's the way those drugs were administered that raises new questions. Big questions. The medical examiner notices something that doesn't add up. The injection sites on Sarah's body don't match self-injection. When someone injects themselves, they have control. They choose the spot, they control the depth of the needle, they manage the angle. But Sarah's injection sites tell a different story. They're too deep. The angles are wrong. And here's the most damning detail. There isn't a single defensive mark on her body, no signs of struggle, no indication she was conscious when those final fatal injections were administered. The medical examiner's conclusion is clear and chilling. Sarah Harris had been injected while she was unconscious. Someone else administered those drugs. Someone who had access to her while she was incapable of resisting. And suddenly, this isn't an overdose case anymore. It's a homicide investigation. Detectives immediately turn their focus to James Ryan. He was the only other person home that night. He had access to the drugs. He had the medical knowledge to administer them. But suspicion isn't enough. They need proof, hard evidence that James injected Sarah while she was incapacitated. And for weeks, they find nothing. Over a month passes. Investigators are stuck. They know in their gut that James is responsible, but they can't prove it. The case is going cold. And then, just when it seems like justice for Sarah might never come, something unexpected happens. Sarah's sister, Rachel, walks into the police department carrying a laptop, Sarah's laptop. The day before, Rachel had been sorting through her sister's belongings, trying to find some piece of Sarah to hold on to. She found the laptop, guessed the password, and logged in. She opened Sarah's Facebook messages, probably expecting to read old conversations, happy memories. What she found instead stopped her cold. A flood of messages between Sarah and James, hundreds of them. And as Rachel scrolled through conversation after conversation, a horrifying pattern emerged. These weren't the messages of a concerned boyfriend trying to help his girlfriend. These were the messages of someone actively encouraging Sarah's drug use. Messages telling her how much to take. Messages instructing her on how often to use. Messages that made it clear James wasn't just aware of Sarah's addiction. He was fueling it, controlling it. And then Rachel found the most disturbing message of all. Proof that James had injected Sarah while she slept on at least one earlier occasion. He'd done this before. Rachel printed everything. 200 pages of messages, a complete timeline of Sarah's decline, documented in James's own words. She handed it all to investigators, and for them, this was the breakthrough they desperately needed. The messages don't prove that James injected Sarah on the night she died, but they prove something just as important. They prove he had done it before. They prove he'd been knowingly supplying her with powerful drugs. They prove he had the means, the opportunity, and the pattern of behavior. For detectives, this is finally enough. 2 months after Sarah's death, investigators track James Ryan down in a parking lot. The same man they now believe was central to the chain of events that ended Sarah's life. He's immediately taken into custody and brought to the police station, led into an interrogation room. At this point, detectives already have more than enough evidence to charge him, but they still need to understand why. Why was he supplying Sarah with such powerful drugs? Did he inject her that final night, or did he simply provide the means and encourage her to do it herself? They need to hear his side of the story. But when the questioning begins, James Ryan's reaction couldn't be more indifferent. Detectives offer him a cigarette, trying to make him comfortable, trying to get him talking. They explain why he's there. This is all part of the investigation into the death of Sarah Harris. It happened at your house. We just want to hear your side of the story. What can you tell us about January 26th? And James just sits there, calm, collected, almost bored. He responds with something completely unrelated, mentioning that he's been hiding in his attic for 5 months. Then, before detectives can even begin their questions, James shuts it down. I think I would like to have an attorney present. Just like that, the interrogation is over. But before James is led away, someone else steps into the room. A DEA agent named Samantha Marston. And she's about to make something very clear to James Ryan. His entire world is about to collapse. She introduces herself and explains her role. Part of my job is regulating the pharmaceutical industry. We license you. We regulate the security of controlled substances, the record keeping, everything. And I don't know if you're aware, but your drugs were not secure at your facility. We opened cabinets. Your records were disorganized. We couldn't track what you ordered, what you used, what went missing. She pauses, letting that sink in, and then she delivers the blow. At this point, with your arrest and what we found, we have to ask for your licenses. This means you cannot prescribe, order, dispense, or administer any controlled substances. Your career as an oral surgeon is over. James Ryan is formally charged with second-degree depraved heart murder. It's a specific type of charge that doesn't require proof of intent to kill. It only requires proof that he knew his actions could kill Sarah and continued anyway. That he acted with such reckless disregard for human life that death was a likely outcome. As the case goes to trial, even more disturbing details emerge. According to an interview with Tina, James once made a confession during a drunken conversation. He said he first noticed Sarah when she was just 14 years old. 14. And he would bring his own kids to the toy store where Sarah worked just so he could see her. He'd been watching her, waiting. Prosecutors paint a picture that's almost too dark to comprehend. They point to Sarah's rapid weight loss in the months before her death, the long sleeves she started wearing to hide fresh track marks, the night her family found her high in a room littered with syringes. They argue that James kept Sarah dependent by stealing drugs from his own clinic and continually encouraging her to use them. He controlled her through her addiction. The jury sees the pattern. They see the Facebook messages. They see the toxicology report. They see a man who used his medical knowledge and his access to powerful drugs to slowly destroy a young woman who trusted him. They find James Ryan guilty. He's sentenced to 45 years in prison, a conviction made possible not just by detectives, but by Sarah's sister, Rachel, who refused to let the truth stay buried, who opened that laptop and found the evidence that would finally bring justice for her sister. Sarah Harris was 25 years old when she died. She was a daughter, a sister, a person with dreams and potential and a whole life ahead of her. And she was killed by the person who was supposed to love her, by someone who saw her vulnerability and exploited it in the cruelest way imaginable. This case is a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one standing closest to you, the one who claims to care, the one everyone trusts. And sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please reach out for help. Sarah's story didn't have to end this way. And maybe, just maybe, sharing her story can prevent another tragedy like this from happening again.